ghosts, psychics, pendulums, curses, hexes. We welcome you here to Friday Night Dark in the realm of the night. Come join us and listen to this week's presentation, and we bid you welcome. Good evening. This is Drew, and I welcome you back to Friday Night Dark. Hey, tonight I am going to be talking about something that, well, as I like to tell people, is not a surprise and yet still is kind of a repeat, but not. What do you mean by that, Drew? I already know people are saying that. Well, I'm going to start with a little bit of history, and I'm going to be talking about the Ouija board. Yeah, Ouija, whatever you want to call it. The Ouija board itself was invented and the first commercialized in 1890 with its U.S. patent granted in February 10th, 1891. The invention is credited to Elijah J. Bond, and he was an attorney who filed the patent while Charles Kennard and the Kennard Novelty Company helped bring it to market. Now you're probably figuring, why would I be mentioning this? Is because even though it was invented per se, it actually did it exist in other forms. And here is one of the reasons why I'm bringing it up is because they talk about the history that that spiritualists were using talking boards, if you will, for a while. And in 1890, Elijah Bond made it more into a commercialized thing. And then, of course, moving forward, as the story goes, I can't even talk today. As the story goes, in the 1890s and onwards, William Fuld later popularized and mass market the board. Now, if you know anything about the marketing history of the particular product of William Fuld's Ouija board, you'll know that it was owned by Parker Brothers at one time. Between the time that they actually made the acquisition, which was in the 60s, 1960s, mind you, and when it was being marketed by William Fuld, it was changing hands, and it sold over 6 million units. Now, one unit meaning a board and the little planchette that goes with it. Now, talking boards themselves actually owe their history back to a practice called Fuji, which is a Chinese practice of the same thing, except instead of a board with letters on it, you actually had something else going on. You had a pen, in a way, that was put into this planchette. Now, this kind of goes into that spirit writing. And I know some people would say, well, wait a minute, didn't you talk about all this? Yes, I did. And why I'm bringing this all up in a kind of a semi-excited fashion is because I was asked a very odd question. And the question that I was asked was something that I didn't think about. Someone asked me, well, who would buy a Ouija board more often, men or women? And in this day and age where gender, I think, has taken on a different role, I would have to say that anyone who has any curiosity, whether it be for spiritual, occult practices, or perhaps maybe just fun and getting a thrill, these are things that I would probably say would influence anyone from making any kind of decision making, right? Well, therein is why I brought this up. As I kept saying to a lot of people, I know that there are psychological factors to this, and I also know that there are spiritual factors to this. But I decided, hey, who mostly bought, what was considered, the, what do you call it, a Ouija board person. Who would buy a talking board, a spiritual board, or whatever you want to call it? And honestly speaking, if you look out there, there's different versions of the very same thing. As a matter of fact, I had a friend a long time ago who actually made his own version of a Ouija board. He actually had this like machine, and he painted these things, and he was burning it in with like a special laser, etching into the board and coloring it black. And then of course it was these like two demonic type figures, if you will. And it was like, the yes, no, and the letters and everything and the numbers. And he never designed the planchette that was supposed to go with this because he figured it would just be art. And he said, if anything, people can still just get a quarter or a rock or some other way to, indicate. And I've told people, especially on TikTok, that I would, in fact, run a Ouija board session. Now, I kind of did, and I did it on a marathon kind of thing. I think I did this on Halloween, as a matter of fact. And I did a few other things because I also had talked about possession and whatnot, and we all know that infamous connection to a Captain Howdy on a Ouija board that would facilitate the possession of one Reagan from the film The Exorcist. And so there was a great deal of connectivity in just bringing that all up, because if you've been really taking a good look at some of the things that I've talked about, you're going to start to see where some of this stuff stems and what directions they all seem to go in. So should it be anyone's surprise that as I'm talking about the whole idea of a Ouija board again, that here we are, the subject has surfaced. But this time, the question of, who bought it more kind of like went out there, and I said, that's interesting. Let's go look it up. And so as far as people buying it, the short answer is there's no published statistically rigorous demographic breakdown of Ouija board purchasers. No, really, there isn't. And the available reporting and historical analysis show patterns, but not quantified by a demographic, including gender. As a matter of fact, it's more that it's, there's no more men than there were women. There's no more women than there were men. It teeter-tottered quite a bit. And so this made me look into it a little bit further. So the sources that I did happen to find, they did say that, there was at one time more women than men that bought it. And then it also said that of it, teenage girls were actually in that group. Older teenage girls would want to go get one of these Ouija boards or whatnot. So of course, it's associated with sleepovers, Halloween gatherings, and youth culture, especially what was it? Anytime after the 1960s onward. And there is described a lot of, what do they call it, subversive entertainment for teenagers and grad students. It basically would, peak popularity in some instances, but in other cases, it didn't really do much more than just provide a cheap thrill, if you will. And because I know folks have handmade these things, I did a little research, and I think I'm just going to go ahead and just reveal it here, is that I'm going to be doing a giveaway. And it goes something like this, and that is that you need to know the first, I don't know, no, not like the first. I think what I'm going to do it this way. I know that certain episodes are still listenable and you can find them. But I would say the first real Halloween, and that week, that first Halloween week, you got to know what the subject was. And you got to be the first. Now it's findable. You can find it. And I know there's people out there who are probably going to say, I can't find it. Oh, no, it's out there. I can promise you it's there. If you find it and you can email me, then if you're the first in that inbox, then I will mail you this little Ouija board. Free, gratis. It's all on me. Serious. It's all yours. But before we go there, let's continue this whole thing as I was talking about. There are teenagers and young adults, as I mentioned before, that kind of did this for that. But historically, women are often the ringleaders or mediums in Ouija sessions. And this goes back even before William Folde's marketing. As I mentioned before, there's history from the 1850s, 1860s, and if you remember, you'll know that a seance, which is derived from the French word to sit, there were folks in the mid 1800s, or the mid 19th century, should I say, that actually were using a form of talking board, but instead it was what they called a table turning. They would turn this table to give letters to spell things out. And of course, that later would lead to some of the seances where people would channel actual spirits and talk to them and give answers or what have you. Now, yes, there were a few kinks in the road, as I will go ahead and say, is that it was, they were produced as frauds. But why it's important to bring this up is because there were a lot of legitimate experiences that happened from this. And there were a great influence to some very famous writers. Sir Arthur Conan Doyle is one of them. And Edgar Allan Poe, believe it or not, is one of them. What they have in common is they actually did have a thing for the spiritualists that happened around that time. Consequently, there were other people who were influenced by this, and it would actually become an influence of storytelling for not just one, but many writers, including one of my favorite, H.P. Lovecraft. Now, I'll never discount Edgar Allan Poe because he is also one of my favorites, but if they were to actually sit there and say which one of us is your most favorite, I would say you guys going to have to duke it out. But anyhow, getting back to the whole demographic scene here, it's interesting because there was a notable example where Dallas once, the city of Dallas once showed an unusually high volume of Ouija board related Google searches compared to other U.S. cities, and suggesting localized cultural or seasonal interest rather than a national demographic trend. And I thought that was interesting in and of itself, but believe it or not, folks were actually looking for data in weird places. Pun intended, because they're not looking just in Google searches, they're actually looking at different search places, even like Yahoo, or what's that other one that was out? I think Bing is one of them, and there's Ask, which was a search engine way back when, but this is where some of this data has been derived from. So what it means is that despite the fact that something so primitive still entices the attention of so many people at that level, even in the 21st century, should tell you something. That there are people who have a very strong interest in such a simple device, and yet many things have been inspired by this. So yeah, it does have a relevance, and as you can see, I'm just kind of bringing out little things here and there. Now, there is occult-interested adults who might also look at this. And of course, in, what do they call it? There was and still is a strong adult interest in talking boards as part of spiritualism, paranormal tourism and a collector culture. Now, the reason why it's permeated into the collector culture is, if you remember, I talked about, haunted dolls and possibly attachments to them, and even to antiques. I brought this up when I actually started exploring the Dybbuk box. And if you remember, I did an actual exploration on the Dybbuk box a while back. And more specifically, I actually kind of tested the theory. I sometimes wonder. I know people are like, why is he being so quiet? Well, because I'm sheepishly admitting to the fact that when I did it, this investigation into what I thought might be a Dybbuk bottle, it was kind of a disappointment, but there's a catch to all that. I started getting a lot of orb activity around that time. So it makes me wonder if there's some relevance to it. Now, I can't turn back because said item is no longer in my possession. It is gone. It's far away. Even if I wanted to, the person who procured said item from me can never, under any circumstances, give it back. And I told them that. And they gleefully called me one January morning and they said, "Hey, you remember that thing that I got from you the other day? I sold it." I'm like, "You sold it?" "Yeah." "Okay, can I have some of the proceeds from that?" And I'm like, "Why?" "Because I shipped it to you for free." But no, I didn't. They ended up just keeping the money for themselves, and I don't know exactly what they use it for, nor do I care. Why this is relevant is because the Ouija board, much like a Dybbuk box or these haunted items or whatnot, actually do have a market. And if you were to even go someplace as popular, say, as eBay, you're going to find a whole ton of these things out there. Antique ones, collector's item ones, unique ones, weird painted ones, and not so weird painted ones. And well, as my friend did way back when with his, and still yet others I knew, that they'd got a wood burner or a way to burn with onto wood. They were able to make their own handmade Ouija board, and they gave it to me because they said they were scared of it. Now, this is back way back when I was like, between 10 and 14. And the person that gave me that Ouija board, he didn't want anything to do with it because he said that it was doing things. And I think he was more scared of his mom, if you ask me, than he was of the board itself, because I'm sure he probably could have burned it. But, I had it for a while. And then, of course, it was discovered, and I had to explain a lot of stuff. And then we had to dispose of it. And the person that made it didn't want it back, so we ended up, taking it somewhere else. But there was someone who bought it from us, and gave us a sizable amount of money because it was homemade, and we tested it, and it worked. And that's what some of the appeal is to this, is that people buy them and not just collect them for the sake of, it's a collector's item. They bought it to use it. And they wanted to test the actual efficacy, I guess, for lack of a better way of putting it, of this particular item. And they came back and they told us about their results. Yeah, I know. I don't know if they were doing it to entice me or to make me feel bad, or like that fear of missing out. I kind of find that it's still a behavior that permeates with this kind of a thing. I have that, so I figured, okay. But when you really think about it for a second, movies like The Exorcist, or even Stranger Things, they do cause a temporary spike in sales or searches for such type of things. And I wonder sometimes if there might have been some of that influence, because when you look between the 1960s and then now, the horror film genre has so many films in it, and in some cases, there's always the errant Ouija board or a pendulum or some type of divining device that falls into play. So you can kind of see how someone who is like a occult interested adult might want to do something with this. But, you know, contrasted with pop cultures, it certainly would be something that over time, I have to really think, over time, people are going to want to still buy this. And so I think this distinctly adds to the phenomena of this particular board. If you think about it, I don't know if sleepovers is even a popular theme even these days. I remember growing up, I mean, that was pretty common. Nowadays, I can't say. Um, but one of the things that I do know is that there were, some groups of people that they would go and just buy them up and then do like a bonfire with them too. So it did have a darker side that way. One thing for sure, when I was looking into the demographics of it, because it really said in short there wasn't anything there, I think it's because people didn't think there was like any want or need to, or perhaps maybe it would debunk inadvertently some kind of information on the subject. To be quite honest with you, if it does or it did, I don't think it would be such a bad thing. P.T. Barnum would, on several occasions, he would take adversity and turn it into some kind of a profit. And even on his own self-imposed hoaxes, he presented one of the, what was it, a mermaid, a skeleton of a mermaid, and found out it was a hoax. But yet, somehow it was put on somebody else. But it caused enough hype that people were willing to pay and see this, and pay and see the show. Yeah, okay, so I'm bringing all this up because I know this has always been a center point for a lot of people as far as, Ouija boards are concerned. And I really do think, for lack of a better way to present it, that if you have something of great controversy, that it would stand the test of time regardless. And I think this is important to bring about with this object because there are so many different versions of the same thing. Even the one that was marketed, it underwent a lot of changes. If you look at the original boards and then you look at the ones that they put out now, I mean, it's just a cheap plastic planchette. It doesn't look like it can last very long. The board has changed. It's basically got a sticker on some kind of a particle board. Really, go look. I did my research. And it even made me at one point think, you know what I want to do? I want to actually make my own. And I just might. But as I mentioned before, I happened to get one because I was looking at it. And I'm still interested in the idea of making something like that, some kind of a Ouija board. I just don't know how I would do it yet. If you have suggestions, you're more than welcome to actually send me a message and say, hey, I want one that looks like this. Now keep it clean, folks. Just because I'm willing to take suggestions doesn't mean that I'm going to actually do something that's, crass. Now, the one friend who made it, as I mentioned, he had two demons there and whatnot. When he made it, I think he had an idea for it. And the fact that I encouraged him to make it did actually create a story in and of itself because his plan was to make 10 of them. He only made 2, and he gave up after the second one because there was so many problems with the machine that he made it with that at one point he said, I can't do this anymore, Drew. I really can't. I said, okay, that's fine. And I said, if you want, I can buy one of them off of you. And he just gave them both to me, which blew me away. I'm still I want to do this and I wanted to use it and make sure that I was able to get something. I even went so far as to do some kind of an investigation with it to see if it actually, like, would be a portal opening of some sort. Nope, didn't get anything. Doesn't mean it can't. Remember, these are tools, and if you remember the stuff I've been talking about with the phasmophobia, tools of a paranormal investigator, and what have you, then you're going to know that these are items that can and could still be a divining rod, if you will, for this type of activity. And so, because of the fact that use does make them a little bit more personal and therefore an item of attachment, that includes what you try to contact with it. So I would kind of use it as a phrase of chumming the waters for the sharks. Does it really bring about that way? It could. I don't know. But there you go. And I think this is one of the things that's out there. Some people, they collect haunted dolls or haunted rings or haunted jewelry of some sort, watches, clocks, you name it. Ouija boards are no exception. And so that's one of the reasons why I figured, hey, this is an item that not only stands the test of time over, 100 years, 150, 170 years, but now let's look at it another way. This is something that if you were to put one up, even as a framed piece of art, someone's going to say, hey, I know what that is. I remember when I was a kid. Yes, I know. So there is some truth to the idea that a demographic of any kind can't be pegged to the most purchases. A gender itself may not be pegged to a specific purchase amount that's one over the other. However, there are a lot of instances where cultural curiosity and things that happen in the modern times, if you will, things that come up and become popular. Ouija boards become popular with it if they are brought up. And if it's a very successful type of incident or event, and it happens to create that same curiosity, then you can certainly bet that people are going to go looking for it once again. I really think it's relevant even to today's culture in every form. I mean, from streamers to podcasters like me. And honestly speaking, I really wanted to be certain that as I shared this information, that if you decide one day you want to try to play with one of these things, do your research first. And certainly second, when you do it, be very careful about what you do. Because although I know some people will say, I'll never touch it, I'll never do that, there's always that other person that did, and they have stories to tell. And it spans. I mean, we're talking well over 150 years, 170 years, as I mentioned. So, of course, there's going to be stories that will be told. And I don't think a lot of them are just made up or embellished in any way, shape, or form. I've got a few myself, and I might still share them one day, but not today. But I will say this, if it does actually stir any curiosity in what it is that they may or may not do, I know that means that you'll probably want to go looking and maybe ask some questions. And if you start talking about it and asking those questions, I'm hoping somewhere in there, you might want to ask a question to me. Where else? Friday Night Dark at nitrax.com. Hey, this is Drew, and I bid you